what it takes to be a sick fuck novelist. What you need to do is create an asinine concept where the main character of the story is a child or several children. You can go with teenagers. I prefer writing about teenagers because they are sexually and physically developed and can do the same things an adult can do. But you can write about a child too. Like, make your character an 11-year-old boy or something. Something bad happens to him in the beginning of the story, usually the death of a parent or parents, that leaves him in an orphaned or semi-orphaned state. The child is then forced to go on a journey, either in the real world, or it could be some kind of a magical world in another dimension, or maybe a mix of the two. What you want is an asinine plot or concept where you are not too restrained by logic, so you can have the room to create all kinds of fucked up, degenerate concepts without having to work your brain too hard. Then you can just have the child go through a series of vignettes where he or she suffer terror and abuse. As you write this, you will masturbate to the fantasies that you're writing down, because the fantasies are sadistic and they get you off more than looking at porn. In fact, if you could make a real child suffer that way, it would be way more satisfying than sex. Throughout the journey, the child will meet abusive human beings and maybe even supernatural monsters that will inflict pain and terror on the child. Tailor all the villains and monsters so they have a predilection for sadism, where rather than kill their prey right away, they terrify it or hurt it physically. Of course, this also works as a great plot device, which allows your hero time to figure out a way to defeat the enemy or escape. Then you masturbate to that, wishing it wasn't just a fairy tale character but a real person you could put through that kind of suffering and play God over. Stephen King is a master at crap like this. See, like right here is talk of repeating themes in popular culture regarding orphans and labyrinths. An orphan ends up in a scary labyrinth full of monsters. You can write that a child gets gashed with a knife by a bad guy. The child gets raped by a pedophile. The child contends with all kinds of sadistic freaks. It's a lot easier to deal with such concepts and enjoy them if you yourself have been physically abused as a child. In the novel It, Stephen King, if he even writes any of those books at all that have his name on them, he invents a monster that seems to be able to do anything, or at least create very believable illusions. Right here he causes adult Beverly to drink a cup of sewer shit by somehow making her believe it's tea. The monster is so ridiculous that it's not bound by any logic, really. And by being able to become whatever it wants and do whatever it wants, you as a writer don't need to engage in mental gymnastics to figure out how to get your character to drink shit. For example, if your story is grounded in reality or has too many concrete rules it has to follow, such as the monster having limits to its magic, it will be much harder to contrive a scenario where your character drinks shit. But what if you get off or get kicks out of the idea of someone being humiliated by drinking shit? Well, you have to figure out how to contrive a scenario like that. So Stephen King creates a monster where just about any fucked up thing he pleases can occur, and he doesn't have to think hard to contrive it. So if he wants to write that bugs came out of fortune cookies, he can just write it, because it's just some supernatural shit, which is much harder to contrive if your monster is like a normal human being or something. And if you're concerned about society not accepting your work, or your reputation being damaged in front of society, well, because your main character ends up prevailing over all of the sadistic villains, it won't seem as if it's a sick fuck who wrote the story. It'll seem as if you're just a good writer who is writing a good versus evil story with the good winning. No one is going to know that you were jerking off to the child getting a beating by some abusive, creepy, pedophile adult villain in the story.